Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We have now Andrew Gottlieb, who is the director of our wastewater collaborative activities, and you're here to present your budget.
Right.
Welcome.
Thank you. So our budget's actually pretty straightforward. It's, depending on how you want to look at it, it's either more or less than it was in fiscal 11. I'll give you the it's less than argument. I'll give you the less than argument, then Mark can debate the point.
Yeah.
It's less than in the sense that for sort of our ongoing baseline activities, we are at less than we were in fiscal 11. So there's the major cost items. My salary, which is level funded as it has been for the 4 years, and then the other major component is the municipal services piece, which is a continuation of the ability to have on retainer technical consultants in the area of wastewater planning and engineering and finance, which currently we're halfway through the first year of that initiative. We hired Mike Domenic and Bob Ciolik to do those two jobs respectively. I think it's been a very well received initiative.
Very well received.
We've been able to provide good support to a number of towns in the area of finance and planning. Everybody, to my knowledge, everybody's interacted with them has been satisfied with the work that's been done. And the collaborative's proposing to continue that service at a level fund. We had roughly allocated about $50,000 for each of those two services. It's in one pot, so it's a little bit fungible, but we're on track. I'd say year-to-date spending on those two is a little under half of what I anticipated for the year, so I think we're gonna sort of get through the year pretty much on track, on budget, without having had to say no to anybody. We've got a number of projects that are ongoing across the Cape. They've done work in Orleans, Wellfleet, Barnstable, Yarmouth. They are.
You did something in Harwich too, I think.
Well, haven't actually worked for the town. Hasn't done a request. We came into town and did a presentation
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
on a cost study, but neither Mike nor Bob has gotten deeply involved in Harwich activities yet. I would anticipate we probably will. We've got sort of open work task orders with some work in Mashpee, which will, by definition, ultimately involve Barnstable to the east, Falmouth to the west, because of the nature of the work that's being done on the planning side. Some ongoing activities with Yarmouth, just getting started with Eastham. Probably some ongoing additional work as Wellfleet ramps up. So I think the distribution's been good. Big town, small town, up Lower Cape, Upper Cape. Been pretty well spread out. I think something that's well worth continuing. If we continue it, we will end up rebidding the work. The contract that we executed with them was for the course of the fiscal year. So we're in the process of preparing our respective RFPs to put that back out, and we'll see where that falls. Again, I've been very happy with the work that the two of them have done, and would assume that they will pursue continuing the relationship, and we'll see who else bids on that. So those are the major guts of our sort of what I consider our ongoing activities. There was money that had been allocated through the collaborative's budget to support some activities at County Health and Environment, the Commodity database on managing the septic systems. Fiscal 11 had about $42,000 to cover the better part of a staff person's time on that project. The understanding when we did it this fiscal year was that would be the end of it, and no money was requested from County Health to the collaborative. We didn't include that in the budget. I'm not sure how that's being dealt with, but that came off of the collaborative's budget. So those baseline activities, as a result, are a little bit lower. The other thing that's not in the proposal for this coming fiscal year that is in this year, some of the work that we have been doing on wetlands permitting. We've got some money left over in the balance of this fiscal year. We're going to do another phase, the next phase of that work. I anticipate it crossing over into next fiscal year, but we'll be able to complete it with monies that were allocated out of this fiscal year. No need to expend any or appropriate any additional monies for that next year. So that's the argument for we're less. The reason we're more is there are two one-time, what I consider sort of one-time special activity requests that we're seeking $100,000 each for. One is legal defense, anticipation of the ongoing need to participate in litigation related to the wastewater suits that are contemplated by CLF. We have $100,000, 50 out of the county budget, 50 out of the commission's budget. For this fiscal year, we thought it made sense to bring that out of your reserve account, sort of into the daylight a little bit, if you will, and tell the world, and tell the assembly that we think we've got an additional exposure here. We're estimating it to be $100,000 on the county side. I think Commission's pursuing 100 on its side, so it's a bigger number for the full year to position us to deal with whatever happens. Obviously, the suit resolves itself, gets dropped, whatever that case may be. We don't need to spend the money. You can take it back. Or if we end up in a detailed litigation with Discovery, I can pretty much assure you we'd be back looking for more.
Okay,
I don't know.
so at this point, we're just talking about an allocation of funding that has the ability for appropriation and not an appropriation of funding that,
No, this is a request for an appropriation.
Right, it's in the budget.
It's in the budget. We put it in the budget. Now, people you can do with it what they want, but we thought that it made sense, rather than sort of say play hide the ball and say, well, we think we might need to spend some money next year, but it'll be in the reserve account and we can go ask for it from the assembly. I thought it made sense that we just say, we know we've got an exposure here. I can't define it for you fully. $100,000 seems like a prudent amount to ask for, and put that out for discussion. And there was
concern about how long this double ganger is going to be out there.
I don't know. I can't tell you. We are not in the driver's seat in the timing of that. So all we can do is prepare for it.
The putative reason for them doing it is to whether or not we're making progress with regard to the things they're concerned about. Do we get any indication from them other than an adversarial one that they're holding this out there to
I have
hit
no
us?
indication from them one way or the other what they're thinking.
Well, what I'm
Officially
looking
or
for-
unofficially.
What I'm looking for is that, we're doing a lot of work to move this whole process forward. We're making progress on it. And I'd like to find out how we get some comment that they're recognizing that, we are actually working in what they have said is the reason for bringing this to the attention of the courts.
They're not prepared to talk to us yet. We've made requests to talk through our attorneys, and at this point, they ain't talking to us.
Well, I think the people who are watching this need to know that that we have reached out to them, that we are trying to come to a settlement of the suit before
There is no suit right now.
No,
There's nothing.
a settlement of the
Issue.
of the
Trying to
issue.
come to a resolution of the
Right.
issue.
Okay, and
As
that we're
opposed to
doing what we
settlement of
can
the suit.
to do that, but it appears that they, as an organization, are not being responsive.
Whatever their legal strategy is, talking to us right now does not
It does not
further
include that.
Does not further that strategy.
What's the second one? The
The second one is $100,000 for the fund the scientific review panel. And if you recall, where we are with that right now is your most recent communication back to the town of Orleans was that the county would support their efforts to pursue funding for National Academy work, but that unless there is a agreed upon scope and funding made available by someone, whether it's state, local, or federal, by July 1, that we were going to consider the National Academy work no longer viable and would pursue and implement our plan to hold an independent scientific review sponsored by the county early in fiscal 12, which really means the early part of the fall, get past the summer.
Right.
So what this does is fund that. This is the budget that, based on the work we've done, Mike Domenic has supported the county in development of this agenda. The Technical Advisory Committee, which everyone was very interested in making sure had a role in this, has participated in the development of the draft scope. They're meeting at noon today to finalize for public review a proposed scope and roster of potential participants. Once we get the sign off of the TAC, which I hope will come today, we will initiate a public comment process, which, the process is trying to figure out exactly how to run that so it doesn't turn into a food fight. We will send a draft of the proposal to each one of the 15 boards of selectmen. We'll try and distribute it as best we can, use the web and some other direct contact with people we think and know would be interested in it. Probably hold 1 or 2 public meetings, try and solicit productive comment, and incorporate productive comment into the scope so that by, say, April-ish, May, the outside, we'd have an agreed upon, publicly reviewed, not satisfactory to everybody, but pretty damn good and tight and legitimate plan for what we would do in the fall in the event the NAS thing doesn't come to pass. Again, we thought it appropriate to explicitly put out there that if people really want to see this happen, there's a cost associated with it, and this is what we think the cost is. Could we cobble together money out of existing appropriations to do this and not do some other things, not do the municipal services piece, drop the wetlands piece? Yeah, probably. I think that does a disservice to everybody's collective interest, because we would not be doing things that are directly of benefit to our member communities. We would not be doing things that are directly benefit to moving some critical policy issues forward, to the expense of doing this review, which, the value of which would be, is in the eye of the beholder. So we made a policy decision that, at least to you, that we would recommend an explicit identification and appropriation associated with that of what the cost would be of this work. And if people want to do it, fine. If they want to say, we don't want to spend $100,000 on that, I'd like to know that in the spring, and we can put the thing to sleep. So I thought it's something that, I got a pretty good idea where you folks are coming from. I don't have a real good sense of how the new assembly's going to view it, and it seemed like a really good opportunity to say, here you go. And I'd imagine we'd spend a lot of time talking about it at the committee hearing to educate people as to where we are and get them to weigh in on whether they think this is a worthwhile expenditure. To date, the county, if you will, and this is an early part of the process, continues to be the only one in this discussion, state, federal, local, that's put a dime on the table to support this work. This independent scientific review in whatever form it takes. The rest of it's just been chatter. I am not aware of one single town that's planning on putting a warrant article on its town meeting for fiscal 12 to fund that work. Not a one.
Nor is there a legislator, or is there anyone on the
Well, there's a lot of
meeting with him,
there's a lot of talk about legislative interest in funding the thing. I've not yet
I
seen.
haven't seen
Well,
anybody.
Word
A lot of talk.
There's a lot of talk.
It's talk, and when Keating was in the Christmas parade in Falmouth, I sort of had an opportunity to talk to him for a while about that, because it's about a mile walk, so he's sort of held captive to the discussion. But he's very concerned about it. He does express concern about the whole issue of funding wastewater initiatives. And because, in looking at that, looking at what the different towns are trying to do, some are doing it on a betterment, some are not. And then in Nantucket, there was an article in the paper the other day where they have to extend their sewer, is in the Mattocket area, I think. And the question is, do they just put the cost entirely on the people who live there? Well, that's like,
That's what Barnstable tried to do.
That's what they tried to do.
right. That's huge. So
I love their language, their sewer privilege fee.
Yeah, super privileged. But is that something that you guys could maybe have some sort of a forum on, or
Yeah, we're doing a lot of that work, and that's really what Fiolic's doing with each town
That's what
on a town-by-town basis.
Oh, he's
We're-
doing it
yeah.
on a town by town.
As they
That's
request
why we're-
assistance with their sewer financing plan, he,
That's
on
what
our
we're
behalf,
doing.
is going into each one of these towns and saying, let's look at what your finance structure is, let's look at what the law allows and come up with a financing plan that distributes the cost as equitably as possible. And I think what you're seeing, you've seen a sort of an evolution, if you will, between what Barnstable tried to do, which was initially, the 100% betterment at Woquacket and Stewart's Creek. That's sort of moved to a 50-50 betterment town tax rate deal on Stewart's Creek. Yarmouth recently came out with their financing plan, which Bob had worked with them extensively on. They relies much more heavily on tax rate as opposed to betterment. And I think that's the way this is headed, because it distributes the cost more equitably across the whole rate base, recognizes the town-wide benefits of clean water, and provides some modicum of rate relief in that once you put something on tax, it then becomes deductible as an increment on your federal income tax at whatever rate you're being taxed at. So, it provides some non-CAPE, non-state related source of offset of some of that cost.
See, I think that's a discussion that should be had, because there are people in communities that say, I think it should be paid by everybody. For instance, because the estuaries usually end up with beaches. We all enjoy the estuaries, we all enjoy the beaches, so everybody benefits from it. So why shouldn't everyone pay for it? And then there are the others who think, no, part of it should be on a betterment, because those are the people, because that's the way the betterments are set up. If it improves your property, therefore you should pay the betterment. So
And we
I
could
think
do another
that's
one. We did the big wastewater day out in Yarmouth back in the spring. We held the whole day, and
Yes,
finance.
I remember that.
A lot of that finance piece was part of that. If it's timely to do
Right.
another one, we can do another one.
Right.
It's pretty. Frankly, it's pretty cheap to do it at this point because all the material is pretty well cooked. We've got more examples than we used to because of the work that Bob's done on our behalf. And we can get a room and paying for his time. It's not a big deal. We can do that again in the spring if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what he's doing
on a town by town.
in a detailed basis. Sort of beyond the overview. I mean, all you can do in the course of a day like that is touch the tips of the waves and tell people it's possible. You can't really play it out in detail until you get in and get your hands dirty in town. And fortunately, that's what we've been able to sponsor him to do on a request basis to each town that's wanted the work. And we've got the capacity. We've got the ability. We've got some budget, and he's got some time to do more of that this fiscal year. And that's what the budget request would support into next fiscal year. So we end up, a couple $100,000 heavier than what we were, a little under $100,000.
150, maybe
Yeah,
a little bit.
than we
Yes.
were this fiscal year.
Because, the downside for the towns is that if they use their retired debt, every year, a certain amount of debt retires, it means they have no money to do capital plans for the next 30 years if they use their retired debt to pay for wastewater. And they're,
Yeah, I mean, it can certainly
That-
consume a lot of capacity. I mean, I think that's what we saw. That's what we saw in Chatham. Their long-term plan was to use retired debt to set aside a reserve to fund the wastewater program. Now, I will say though, the Chatham plan prior to was funded using reserve debt prior to the creation of the zero interest option. When the zero interest option came in, I believe I have this right, the savings from 2% to 0% was sufficient to fund their entire non-wastewater capital program for police, fire, and schools, just out of the savings from going to 2% to 0%. So you're right and say that wastewater can crowd out everything else, but the fact that we've been able to create this zero interest option allowed the town of Chatham the option of funding everything else that was on, all the major stuff that was on their capital plan at no additional incremental cost. That's a huge savings to the town.
It is.
And, we're now entering year 3 of that zero interest option. The only town that I'm aware of with certainty that's going to get a vote to get on the list for calendar 2012 is, no, I'm sorry, 2012 is Yarmouth.
Now, that brings up the whole issue of one of the tasks you've set for providing financial assistance. Now, part of that financial assistance, and I thought it was a priority for us, was to come up with what I would call a model or a template by which each one of the communities could look at what they had to do in order to put together, let's say, an appropriate financing model, to support their interest. Have you seen any progress in that?
Yeah, and that's basically what Bob is going, and what we're using Bob to do is go in and accelerate that learning process, so that he can go into Town Manager X and say, and he's got it all written up. I mean, there's 5 or 6 tools that are out there, and a lot of what we try and do, working with towns and the work that Bob's doing, is to narrow the choices. Because if there's too many choices, it becomes paralyzing. If you get 7 options to analyze, you get sort of a paralysis by analysis and nothing ever happens. So he'll go in and say, all right, there's 7 different things that could happen. Here's what your situation is. These 2 might make sense, or these 3 might make sense. Let's work them through and do some pro formas and see where we are. And so he can shorten what could be a year-long thought process that causes a lot of headaches. So town manager's got a million other things to worry about and doesn't know the wastewater business. He can shorten that discussion down to a month.
Okay. Beyond the 3 towns that are actively, involved with, pursuing this, do we have a list of the towns that have seen Bob and that have heard his suggestions?
Well, what I have is a list of, I have 2 lists, I guess. One is the ones we have requested direct service that we're providing to them or will over the course of the balance of the fiscal year. And I guess if I went back and looked at the attendance list for the forum we held in Yarmouth, I could glean from that who else has heard it.
I guess what I'm getting at is that what do we need to do in order to make sure that we don't get, like 2 years from now, you never told us about it. I want to make sure that we have some evidence that we have made a presentation to all 15 communities, or at least the 12 that don't have hardware in the ground, because I think that's always been part of the the issue, that we come up with these schemes and plans and ideas, but I want to make sure that each one of the communities has at least acknowledged that we've provided the service.
I can come up with a couple different ways to try and get at that question. And I can tell you off the top of my head, who's engaged and who isn't in this discussion.
I can tell you that Falmouth hopefully will have on the warrant for the April town meeting the appropriation of $6 million from retired debt to begin the first phase of the plan. Now, it'll be very interesting to see, first of all, if it gets on the warrant, because the selectmen have to vote to put it on Monday. And if it gets on, what that discussion and debate will be in April. It'll be very interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
But I can tell you, I don't have to do it here, but I got a pretty good idea. So who's engaged and thinking about this, and who hasn't either been responsive to our offers or has not asked. And you won't be surprised at the list.
I probably would be, but the point is...
You could probably guess 3/4 of the list off the top of your head.
I'd rather have you confirm my suspicions. But once you confirm the suspicions, I think that would set us on a path of doing some outreach to at least find out, what the reluctance is to at least listen to our story.
Right.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that people are aware that we are doing that. Okay. Do you have anything else?
No, I just think that I agree with the rationale behind the budgeting.
Okay. Pat?
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to offer us?
No.
Mark
always has questions.
On the scientific review panel, have you solicited matches from the towns who are making the biggest fuss, or have we, or should we? And I'm not suggesting lowering the appropriation, frankly. It's just squeezing blood out of a stone.
I think that, in my honest appraisal is, if anybody's been serious, and we can go through the exercise, I'm not sure, it won't tell us more than we already know, which is for the 9 towns that have said, we really want this NAS thing, nobody stepped up and put a dime on
We
the
don't
table.
ask us less, that's the thing.
I know.
Yeah.
And, well, we could ask. I don't think we get anything out of it because they haven't put anything on the table for what they've already asked for.
I would be strongly guided by anybody who put up their own nickel as to what they wanted.
But nobody has.
And at that point, if there's no one that's serious enough to put any money into it, then they have to be guided by what we're able to do. And we can or cannot offer it based upon what the interest is in the community.
I mean, I think it clouds, in a sense, it clouds the issue a little bit. Because I think people will play it that, oh, let's see, the county really wasn't serious. You said you were going to do this thing, and you said you'd back us in our effort to get this, and now you're saying maybe there isn't enough money to do it, so how serious?
We have $150,000 that we're proposing in this budget to,
$100
100
to do this.
to do this. I think that that's evidence of our earnestness
Right.
to support what they said they
Like
were.
I said, I feel good about our position in that we are the only entity in this game, in this discussion, that's put a dime on the table.
You can charge them lunch.
I mean, we can add, we can make that request to towns.
But would it do any, yeah.
Well, we can only speculate as to whether they respond to it. But so far, asked and answered.
All right.
Well, it's gotta be done soon, that's why, because they're already voting on
Warrant article.
warrant articles for next year.
Yeah, that's right.
If you're gonna do it, it's gotta be done soon.
So what are you suggesting, Mark?
Well, that's why I asked the question, that's a strategy question.
So are you suggesting that, that perhaps...
Any dime you can squeeze out of somebody else is a dime we don't have to spend.
Right.
Right.
I mean, I think, Mark raises a fair and legitimate point that it's not unreasonable for the towns to put some money up. That said, I don't think they'll put up any money, so it's an
Should we
exercise.
ask?
Huh?
Should we now ask?
I think that's a
strategy question.
that's a strategy question in terms of how you want to position
And
yourselves.
there is pluses or minuses.
There are pluses and minuses to it, and I don't know how it fits into the context of other.
If they're putting so much money in, then we have a say of what goes on.
And
then
by
there's a
watching the
special
tape, if
interest.
they know we have 100 in, then why
Right.
would they offer 5 or 10?
We don't
What's the
have
point?
anything in because it has to go through the assembly for
I know,
for
but I think the
appropriation.
intent is there.
Right.
And I'm clear on the intent, and I'm not suggesting lowering the appropriation, because I think that does send the wrong message.
No,
I
and I'm-
but it's
and-
like,
and
put your money where your mouth
If
is.
we're going to do something, we have to do it, and we have to do it well. All right? We just can't throw, I think in the beginning, we talked about a token amount. I think it was about 25.
I way under, I way lowball what it would
But
take
in
to do it.
looking at it in a serious way, I think you can come up with what I would consider to be a reasonable figure to pursue it. And if this reasonable figure would guarantee that the outcome is something we could stand behind.
Yes.
Okay, and I think that's.
I'm
the most-
completely confident that between the collaboration between the TAC and Mike Domenica, we've come up with a fair, honest, and unassailable process by which we would get a credible answer. Whatever the hell the answer is, I don't know what the answer is going to be.
Right.
That's the point of having a fair and credible, open process.
Right.
And I am quite confident in that. And it takes us wherever it takes us. And that's just sort of the estimate that we have at the moment.
Well, all righty then. I guess that puts us, perhaps you and Mark could have a little discussion with, as far as what the pluses and minuses are of pursuing the option of asking the town to participate in the financing. And then perhaps Mark could give us a report on what the outcome of that discussion was.
Yeah, I can draft something up that we can chew on if you want.
Exactly.
To frame the discussion.
And then, I would be guided by what the two of you in let's say, in council would suggest, and then we could then look at it here.
Like I say, there's pluses and minuses to it. I don't think doing either way is fatal to the broader effort. I think, just let's go into it with our eyes open that they ain't gonna give us any money.
Right. But
Don't waste too much time on that, Andy. All
Okay,
right,
do you
good.
have anything else?
Nope.
Okay, and what would be your, let's see, a specific goal that you want to get done this year?
I would like to come to a successful resolution of this issue of litigation and come out of it in a stronger position to help the towns implement their solutions than we are in currently.
That touches my heart. Any further questions?
You passed.
Fair enough.
Thank you very much,
Your
Zach.
oral exams, right?
Yes.
That's right. I'll get back to you
We'll
on
make
that.
sure the check
Thank you,
clears.
Andrew.
All right, let me see if I can get Jack and or Dave to come over a little bit early.
Okay, that'd be great, so
Yeah.
then we can have
And we can break for lunch.
lunch.
Oh, nice.
I ran out without my packet, my coffee. I thought I was doing so well.
I wanna start
Are we
with this
going to
stuff, but there's
recess?
Piles of it.
Yeah, we're in recess for a
Okay,
while.
let's go to
For
recess.
2 minutes.
And we're-
How
yeah.
is everyone?
Everyone's fine.
Good to see you.
Yourselves?
Jack, how are you?
I'm well, thank you, Bill.
David? how are you?
Dave?
Good, good.
And how are all the meads?
The meets are good. Everyone seems to be.
The meads.
Okay, are we
Good.
on?
We are back on.
We are back on.
Now we're having the
schools.
registry of
Yeah.
deeds budget presented by Jack Mead and David.
David
Dave Murphy.
Murphy.
Yeah.
All the Murphys, you should know.
Say
All
Murphy.
of us.
Everywhere you look, there's a Murphy.
Yeah, triple garden.
My brother-in-law, David Murphy.
Can't swing a dead cat without hitting Murphy, huh?
Especially in my house.
Yeah.
Living in a town with 5 other authorities, I can understand.
Well, Doherty's right. There are a lot of
Copy.
Doherty's.
Now I have mine.
You have yours?
The only one I didn't have was the water for some reason.
Good. That's just because it was out of order. That's why.
Oh,
That's why.
Right.
For a quick summation, basically, we've level funded pretty much everything.
there's no.
Their only increases would be some contracted step raises, but most of our folks are at the top at this point. Pretty much. So there aren't that many, and we're not sure what the fringes are. Obviously, that's Mark's
I'll do that, yeah.
bailiwick. And otherwise, everything's pretty much the same, or if not slightly less. One area where we raised was on professional technical services, but we reduced another category by a greater amount to change that. It's just the basic where we were finding we were allocating the resource. So, other than that, same old boring, you know.
But the excitement comes at the end of every month.
But the excitement comes at the end of every month.
How is-
Speaking of the end of every
One-
month.
Yeah, well, one thing we did, note is that I think our income was up slightly.
December was a little bit
Yeah, we had a
better.
good December.
Good December. What that, again, as I say on the radio every month, I'm not sure what's going to happen, going forward.
An
I do-
obituary is an obituary.
Yeah, I do anticipate, we're gonna have a more foreclosure activity again. We're gonna have another wave of that. The recent decision that just came down from the SJC, sort of clarifying what is acceptable and what isn't relative to ownership of the title of the mortgage at the time of foreclosure seems to have been clarified to some great degree. And I think that was holding up a lot of activity until that decision came down. I'm not sure why it was holding up a lot of activity, to be honest with you, because the answer they gave was the logical one. You should have record ownership, basically, of the title before, at the time you foreclose. If they had done that stuff like we were taught in law school 30 years ago, for the last
any of us
300
have
years,
closed on
they wouldn't have
houses
this
about
problem
that
in the first place, but nevertheless, that decision, I think, and as a result of the national sort of self-imposed moratorium that a lot of mortgage holders imposed as a result of some national issues, I think that's going to ebb, and then we're going to start to see some foreclosure activity picking up. That isn't necessarily, from our purely selfish standpoint, it's not necessarily a bad thing from an income perspective, because we get, an excise tax transaction on those foreclosures, so that is activity. So
pretty
it's not
sad
great,
activity.
good activity, but
It
it's
is,
activity
it is.
that from a purely income stream perspective from the county is not a, it's not the
It
worst
doesn't
thing
matter
that
if it's a
could happen.
foreclosure or if it's a.
Or a
it's
sale,
the
or
same.
whatever,
Yeah.
right? And the sales.
But it helps
I-
the sale.
It does help sales, and I think at some point we're gonna need, we need to, as an economy, to get through this foreclosure stuff so that we get a better idea of, buyers and sellers have a better idea of where the market is. And it's very difficult when you don't have, you have this sort of whole 10%, or 5 to 10% of the market is unsure of it. So, we don't have a bottom, we don't have a fixed point. It's very difficult. Hurts some neighborhoods much more than others, obviously, but it does make it difficult to cut deals, get appraisals, do all the things that are part and parcel of getting a real estate deal done. So,
Yeah, well, unfortunately, in the last several weeks, I've talked to several independent contractors who are cashing in on their 401ks and their whatever IRA money they have in order to cover their mortgage for the next couple of months in hopes that something will break. I've talked to people that, I've been involved with, in consulting businesses in the past, and they said they've never seen it as bad as it is out there now. Now, ratchet that up to, to whatever, say, wage jobs are available, and those are pretty light as well. The biggest employer on the Cape, was it Cape Cod Healthcare, is not hiring.
right.
So, you've got that, and you've got layoffs at the second biggest employer, government agencies, so things are not,
No, I mean, it's going to take a little while, and I hopefully, this is the worst of it, and we start to see things improving. I mean, the economy is, late 70s you were looking and saying we're never going to get out of it, it was really bad. Late 80s, early 90s, we had this similar, scenario. It does come back eventually, knock on wood. But it does, it's a long, slow grind. And I think this is going to be a long, slow grind. Coming back from this one as well, just because it's just employment issues that you're talking about that make it difficult. So, but that being said, getting to this focus, I'd like to think we can at least assume, the money we're bringing in this year will be equivalent. We'll do the equivalent next year. That I don't think we'll go. I don't see us slipping much lower than I think we're at a baseline probably.
Yeah, I think you're right.
In terms of income, and so things improve, then it goes up. Otherwise, I'm somewhat confident that we're not going to go lower than this.
Right.
But
That's what I was going to say, Bill. I think we've factored in all of these kind of question marks that are out there. We've tried to be conservative and adopt this kind of steady state mentality from the registry of deeds.
I think we'll be able to tell pretty quickly in the next cycle, or even before the end of this cycle, whether that forecast is going to hold. As we go through the spring here, if things really look bleak, then we'll know that, well ahead of times that you have to make some just, final decisions, relative to next year's budget. But
Well,
so far, so good, I
Okay,
think.
so getting back to things you can control, I noticed you're not increasing headcount. You've got vacancies on here, apparently you're not intending to fill those. Your budget appears to be pretty much level funded, year to year.
Right. We have no intention of, we haven't really filled a position in 7 years, I believe, so we've been, going through, sort of attriting our way to a baseline number, and right now the demand doesn't justify anything, an increase. And technology is allowing us to do a lot of things that we otherwise wouldn't be able to do, and that's, we still focus on, that's one of our prime areas of examination for us on a regular basis as to what can we do that will allow us to do this better and cheaper, and because, it may come to a point where we, the money is just, we can't do it, we got to do it for less, so whatever the case may be, so we want to try to stay on top of that. We've been,
Primary focus. Really.
yeah, we've got a couple of road trips planned to just check out some places that are doing something slightly differently, and just to see those things, we can take advantage of some technology there too.
So what's the status of the e-filing with the state? Are they anywhere?
I am personally waiting on the Secretary of State's office, and they said that they were going to do this as a group, a uniform CMR regulation, essentially, that we can adopt that will dictate the rules vis-a-vis e-filing. Some registries are doing some limited e-file acceptance, and we would like to get into that, but My prime concern is to protect the protection of the record and to ensure that that person's, owning property or dealing with property in Barnstable County aren't going to be subject to, as best as possible, fraud or anything that could be done in a manner that, is ultra vires and vires on this stuff. And so what we really like to do is have the Commonwealth lay down some ground rules that we're all operating under. So if we meet those ground rules, then a court or whomever is involved in, ever examination of it will say, okay, you comply with the CMRs when you're doing this, or the established regulations relative. Right now, there aren't any, per se. There are, self-imposed ones that various registries have been put on themselves. But we would like to be able to have something. I mean, who can we determine? I think under the UETA and under the various laws relative to electronic transmit, the receiving party can determine who is eligible to send, who you can take documents from, and that's an issue. You're not looking at an original per se. It becomes an original as a matter of law, but you want to make sure your sender.
Who gets to
Didn't
do
we go
it?
through this with faxes? That there was an issue with regard to verifying an electronically transmitted document that was as a fax, because you were generating a hard copy. The issue with regard to e-filing is that you're generating a message which can be corrupted and can be converted, whereas with a fax document, what goes in one end comes out the other.
But it's who's loading the fax machine, or who's at the other end, and that I think that's of paramount concern. Is if you've got someone, if anybody can do it, what are the repercussions? Is it an original instrument? Is it a forgery? If you limit who can file, then say if it's an attorney or if it's a lender, if it's a licensed professional, then there's some relative certainty that that person has a stake in the game.
And there's also a pool that in the event, God forbid, there was some kind of fraud, if it's being done by an attorney, who did it, then there's a
Redress.
A redress pool that can go to the bar association, things like that. So it's a matter of who can we limit this stuff to.
And the liability.
Well, it's just right, and just for insurance purposes, the technology's out there, no question. It's just a matter of how that's going to happen. I'm hopeful that
What do the underwriters for the title insurance people say? Because I think that would be the...
Well, that's the big one, and one of the one of the conditions that I know I have personally is that I want to make sure that these are going to be insurable titles if the documents are sent electronically, and I need to hear from the basically, we ask the providers, the middlemen, the guys that do this electronic recording, who handle it. There are different companies that handle it, and show me. I'm from Missouri. Prove to me that First American, that Ticor, all these big title companies are willing to insure title sent through. In this, or if a document came on as sent electronically, that they're not going to have a cloud in their title or concern about that. Until those questions are answered, I'm reluctant to take that step. We've been one of the more forward registries relative to bringing in technology and doing certain things, but I'm actually kind of letting some of my fellow guys, be the Judas goat on this one before we work the bugs out and make sure it's all getting there. And I think we're close to it. The other one thing that I would anticipate, we're trying to set up our systems now, work towards it so that we're dealing with everything similarly. If it's electronic recording coming in as a live recording, you may be able to walk away with your documents when you come to record, as opposed to having to process. We can sort of take them as an electronic recording as a live recording, effectively, if that makes any sense. You walk in, we treat it, we take the document. You can walk away with your originals. We're not holding on to this paper. We're not having to mail it back. We're not doing certain things that we can cut a number of our steps out, but integrate it into our system.
Streamline the process.
Streamline the whole process. The other thing we're working is with IT to talk about, trying to get the right tools in place that you don't have to buy necessarily a PC for everything to make it work. We can buy some,
Network devices.
that have limited functionality, cost less, less maintenance, things like that go forward, so we're going
Well,
that route.
and that would provide a little bit more security than, than say, than having individual PCs. But remember, we went through a scandal with regard to mortgage originators that were found not to have done, let's say what they call sufficient and necessary review. And there were some, there has been some conversation about that, and this appears to have that kind of an element with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
Or let's say the potential not for negligence as much as for making sure that the public is convinced that we are doing our due diligence with regard to protecting their interest as far as the surety of,
right, well, that's my charge, basically, I mean, that's what I'm elected to do, is to make sure that, the record is kept well and proper, and so that's why I'm waiting, a little bit on this, because
that's a
I'm
good
not
thing.
100% convinced that this is the, a sure deal.
If I may, do you have scrutiny, say, if a loan has been issued and the person is paying on it now, there's a problem? Do you have the authority to be able to go back and to see what took place in that?
No,
That
not
long?
necessarily. I mean, if it's a registered land piece, for instance, I mean, we don't accept it unless the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. So it needs to prove itself basically before we can. The persons who appear to have the authority, and we have to check their authority, etc., before we can accept that document on record based on other documents that are on record. Now, recorded land, that's really sort of the public, through title examination, etc. They're the ones who determine the validity of a title. So we don't have the ability to examine a mortgage to determine whether it's, valid or not. And I mean, the reality is, and I think if we're going to talk about this whole thing, is it's not, people aren't being foreclosed on because there's some invalid mortgage out there.
Right.
They're getting foreclosed on because they're not paying their mortgage, okay? Let's, that's whether for whatever reason, whether they should have gotten that mortgage in the first place is
Well,
100%
that's the question.
different,
I mean,
different
that's
subject.
where the
But, I
funny
mean,
business all took place,
you
because
know-
some people were even being encouraged, like, it doesn't matter if you have the money, we can make this work.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
You know.
but everyone's a grown-up in the
Right.
equation. On both sides, theoretically, on both sides of the equation, and it's hard to have, I don't see any,
And there are some
it's not a
people who
pretty
will
picture
go
on either side of the equation. Let me
I
put it that
absolutely
way. I
agree.
mean, if you're making 30 grand, you shouldn't be borrowing 300. I'm sorry, but if they're making 30, you shouldn't have been lending them 300. So I don't feel, it's hard to, it's
To see who has the
so
blame.
who got, who got
That's not,
hurt.
that doesn't fall within the level of responsibility of the registry.
No.
At the registry, you're supposed to be presented with completed documents
right.
that are, that are recording.
And I question whether
standards.
whose responsibility should fall into. I mean, the fact that
Yeah.
if we're going to get into this philosophical
The
discussion,
fact that it went that far.
I mean,
Nobody was looking at it, obviously.
I did an examination of most, I did a 3-month look at Barnstable foreclosures, but I think it was the beginning of 2009. I looked at 3 months worth of foreclosures in the town of Barnstable. And I found that there were probably 52 or 54 of them over that period. 26 of them, I think, were purchase money purchases. In other words, the mortgages that were being foreclosed on were the first mortgage when the people bought the property. 100% of those were 100% down mortgages, okay?
Right.
So nobody actually put any money out anywhere, okay?
Right.
They borrowed the full
They
value
borrowed
of the property.
100 or
Right.
plus of the amount. So nobody, the person who
rules
got
were
foreclosed on theoretically didn't lose anything, okay, per se. They did, obviously they lost the property that they were in, but they borrowed 100% of the money, so, and if they weren't paying them, they sort of lived rent-free there, theoretically, if they, for the, you took to foreclose.
Can you tell how deep they were in? Like
Well,
how many years in?
Usually there was a year and a half to a year.
Oh, so they're
I mean,
not
they
into
were
it
pretty
to
much
anything.
didn't, a lot of them
They
didn't
probably make a payment.
A lot of them didn't make a
payments.
payment,
Yeah.
okay?
Based
They
on
never-
when it was
Some of them had
foreclosed
never made a
They
payment.
never made
It
a
was
payment.
kind of clear that way. Then there were, the other ones were folks probably who bought in 99, 2000, the last time we really had a big run up. They all got 100% mortgages and then refinanced 3 or 4 times. So they bought the place for $99,000 in 2000 and had a mortgage for $300 in 2004. So I don't know.
Nice cars, nice TVs, and fantastic
So
vacations.
I don't, now there were other folks who, I mean, that was just my
We
small
were
sample of the
encouraged
3 month, but.
as a people.
Right, and so it was, I think, one person who put down 10% who lost there, out of the 54 that I looked at, just a small sample. Everyone else, pretty much,
Right.
I think there were 5 people in total who put down 1 to 2 to maybe 5%. So it was, you look at it and go, wow, this was just money off of tree stuff.
Well,
on
everybody
both ends of the
was
equation,
trying-
it just didn't
yeah.
make any sense. It was, you look back and go, wow, this is a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah.
And,
So-
and that's kind of where we're at.
Music
Okay, if
stop.
you did the chi-square analysis, it was obvious that most of them were
Yeah,
basically
it was a house of cards.
getting a free ride as far as the responsibility that the bank had to vet them out.
Well, there weren't a lot of them weren't bank involved. I mean, like, you have to understand, the mortgage,
Right.
the securities market wasn't, most of the time it wasn't a bank. It would be a mortgage company, investor groups that would buy these products. I mean, theoretically sophisticated people buying these products, and you'd think, but I guess it was probably like, it was similar to, buying those, what was the thing that, what's his name, got in big trouble for, they were buying junk bonds and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. So these guys were playing with this, and it was a giant craps
Well, they were
table.
making a ton of money.
They were making a ton of money,
Yeah.
but, you were looking at it and going, wait a minute, if something's going up 25% a year, chances are it's not gonna continue to do that.
Exactly.
And that's kind of the game that was going on. And, it's hard to see it when you're in it. I mean, to be honest with you.
When you want it and you
When you
feel like
look at it and go,
this is our first
right,
step, we can
we
move
should do this,
forward if we
et
have
cetera,
this
yeah,
property. I mean,
exactly.
it preys on everybody's
understandable.
desires.
But that's here we are
Yeah.
with the fallout.
Well,
Okay,
yeah, when real
all
estate
right.
prices go up 20% a year, and in a year I'll have 20%
Yeah, that's
equity,
right, you
what's the
think
problem?
you'll have-
I'd like to get this back to the
Okay,
the
the
budget.
point, I know,
Okay.
we were doing it.
Thank you very much. Is
Yeah,
there
I
any?
didn't start.
I just said,
I know, I'm sorry I brought it up.
that's good, no, that's a good discussion. The good news in a lot of these technology improvements is the state put together a fund that they actually fund, and you guys have been, if it's fair to characterize, fairly aggressive in accessing
Yeah,
those monies.
we're trying, what we do is anytime we have any technological piece, there's a $5 piece of the recording fee that's allegedly goes to this fund, theoretically goes to the fund. Now, they have stolen it on a regular basis, but,
They being,
They
Careful.
use state-
that
You mean,
Commonwealth.
it's been
Appropriated.
It's appropriated to other
Reappropriated.
uses.
Let me put it that way.
but it doesn't stay in the county. I think people need to hear
Like
that.
No,
the
no, it does
tobacco
not stay in the
fund.
county, and
Right,
it has to go through the House and the Senate and everything else, and
Right.
it goes to the Secretary and the A&F
Formal
and everything else. It's gotta go through a
application
million different people
Right.
before you get it. But they have actually, I mean, in their defense, we have received that which we've requested.
Okay, good.
So we've been pretty good on that. We haven't requested anything out of line, so that makes it
Right.
a lot easier. So we are using that fund as best we can while it's in
Available.
extant
Yeah.
to take care of our technological needs. We just upped our main server, et cetera. That came through that fund. So we have been able to take advantage of some of
Good.
that to a significant degree. Now, how long that's going to last? One of the problems with the whole concept is that it doesn't stay. It's not an automatic pass through, and it has a sunshine provision on it. So to get too dependent on it, you worry on that score.
Right.
But that being said, we are.
Take advantage of
it's
what-
happening
while
again.
it's there.
I've been writing on a lot of this week, so we're going through and trying to get what we can out of it before it all goes away.
Now, you're on the technological committee that meets, and is that
There's
improved for
a
you?
statewide committee that meets. There are that theoretically an annual or semi-annual meeting where they discuss what the funds are being used for. The state registries, it just all goes to, I don't know where it goes, to
Right.
be honest with you. We had a fight, like, I will say this, we had to have a showdown when it first came in, and I think we may have talked about this before, when it first came, the state wanted to take the $5 and put it towards the county, the
Yeah.
state registries, like, whoa. So fortunately, we had Senator Murray and a few allies on our side that we were, the county registries were able to say, hey, at least, let's at least account for that money and so
Right.
whether it's actually there is another story, but
Right.
if we can at least say we got a credit that you can
Right.
use for it, so that was very helpful.
How are you interacting with our IT? With the county
Great,
IT?
we just had a
Everything's
nice
going
meeting
fine?
with them
Okay,
last
good.
week.
Peter Carlson and John.
Good.
We
John
sat down
and
with them
we-
for about an hour. and
Okay,
we had,
so that's all
we
working.
just got a memo from them
Good.
yesterday on
A proposed plan.
proposed plan that we talked about, what we were looking for from them, and what they can do for us, and
mostly security
Yeah,
related,
related
making
stuff.
sure that we've got the proper licenses and
Right.
computers are protected
Firewalls
from
and all
viruses
that.
and everything. I mean, that's
And but
an area that
consulting with,
we rely on them for.
right,
so.
and consulting with in terms of this, some of the upgrades and what's out there,
Right.
what they know.
That's not gonna screw everything else up.
Well, just to tap their knowledge, in terms
Absolutely.
of saying, hey, we'd love to be able to do, point.
Make it so.
Point so, can Obi-Wan can make that happen, you know?
Peter Carlson made a report on the overall IT in the county about a year and a half ago now, and that might be worth resurrecting to see how
Well,
that
that's-
fits into your,
Well, that's
Well,
why
this is the aftermath from this. This is part of that resolution that that they're available to the departments.
Yeah,
Good.
so we're, we'd love to make it, I'd love to make it so that we can do it all with a button, the
Right.
fewer, the fewer people, the better, it's easier, I hate to say it, but it's,
No, absolutely.
life is a little easier when you don't have to, the personnel is what kills you, so,
Right.
but we're not laying anybody off, so people shouldn't have any fear about
no,
that.
but
Oh, that's good.
I'd love to, at a certain point, you'd like to, you want to be, the
want
more you
everybody
can
to have
take
a job.
advantage of the technology, the less pressure there is to have to bring people in.
Right.
And
Good.
at the end of the day, that's some big money saver if you can pull it off. So.
And just FYI, you're in or you're going to enter negotiations with the union?
We are
Early stages.
We're in the early
Early
stages.
stages,
We're
okay.
waiting for a
couple dates.
couple dates from them, but we've talked about. We've got some proposals. We haven't made any formal proposal, but we.
We have a 1-year deal that is expiring.
extended, that's what we did.
It's expiring June 30th.
Right.
All right, is there any takeaway that we should have as far as what you hope to accomplish in the next year?
Well, I'm hopeful that we will have a better handle on where electronic recording is going, and if it is like herding cats, I think at the state level to try to get everybody on this to commit to the we talk about it and then it's sort of this is goes into the ether a little bit and we got to bring it back, but I think as the one advantage that we have, I think with the state registries is that they've got serious budget pressures that are on them, and so they're going to have to move to that model at some point. The problem is they're a competing model. One of the things that the state they want to have their own portal,
Right.
somehow where they get $5, instead of giving it to instead of having they want to be the middleman and
Right.
the guy, and it's like,
Yeah.
it never works. Why are you doing it that way?
Right.
And I think we have to let them sort of fail first with
Yeah.
that, and then
Penny-wise,
they'll go
pound-foolish.
back and just be smart about it and say, hey, what is that $5 going to? It's usually $5 in credits for like EMC, so that
Right.
some consultant can come in and tell you, there's your $5 blown away. I'm like, I
Right.
could have told you that for $2. So,
Right.
it just drives you nuts. So I'm like, where's it's ether,
Oh yeah,
So-
somebody new came in and
Yeah.
had the same idea that's already been
Right,
hashed
right.
out,
So I'm
and
like,
they're
wait a minute,
gonna put
6
that-
other companies are doing this, and it doesn't
Right.
cost you a thing, but you want to do it on your own because you have to have,
Right.
it just. So we got to get through that process. Once that, I think, gets fleshed out a little better.
And that's part of the thing you hope to get.
Well, I'm hoping for a concrete set of regs that I can then, once I have those, and once I'm comfortable that this is what the state has adopted for the requirements, then if I can adapt and incorporate those requirements and maybe add some, but at least I have a base level so that if I get the county gets sued or I get sued or whatever the case may
Right,
be,
you-
we say, hey, we went through A to Z, we did this is what the rules require,
Right.
we followed them. Instead opposed to the rules of Jack, which is,
Right.
I don't want to,
Right,
it's
so
like.
you're covering every
Right, yeah,
base
we're
that
making
you
sure,
think
and so
may
that way,
come up.
anyone, relying on that record can say, hey, all right, that's a record that can be relied on because they did, A through X.
And your fees are pretty status quo? I mean, the fees that you charge?
Well, we don't have any, that's set by the state,
Change, I
yeah,
know,
so
but
it's,
you haven't heard whether or not there's any
There's talk of,
change.
wasn't there talk
You know,
of
Norfolk
upping
is-
that, yeah, the
Norfolk
Norfolk.
County has obviously
Right,
approached
proposed the
us and
$10,
proposed
right,
a
and you
change
were
in
gonna-
some of the fees.
Right,
And so I think that will be coming up again.
Right, in this
Yeah.
legislation.
Because some of the counties out there, I think, are
I think-
looking for some
Let's
revenues
see,
in
we
any
have
way they
been
can
in touch with
find.
those. I don't know if we've taken a
Well,
position.
Pat was going to,
Well, no, I don't think
That
they've
was
asked you to take a
related to-
position yet.
Right.
We-
Last time
We're aware of it.
I talked to Dan, they were
Dan
looking for
Matthews, yeah.
sponsors, yeah,
Right,
so.
right.
So, and he was proposing getting together the county commissioners in each of the county to discuss that very matter.
Okay,
Okay.
well,
Probably.
Keep us,
Yeah.
I will, yeah.
when that happens. Do you have any other
I
questions?
was check-
No.
Yeah, I have one other. What is the world of refinancing today? Is there much of that going on that you see?
We had a good push,
09 was better to.
09 was better. I
2000.
think 09, beginning of 09, rates went down about a point from where they were. That engendered a lot of activity. And then Pete sort of slowed down as the year went on, and then this year it was kind of quiet for that.
Well, there were
Although it picked up
people
again
who could.
recently, because the rates got down real low again. They've creeped back up a skosh, but they're back. I just was checking
About four,
yesterday.
four,
They're high
fours
fours
right now.
for
Yeah.
a 30 points. So I checked, just go to Cape Cod 5, for instance, and just because they have it right on their main page, you can just look, and it just, so they're back in the 4. They were up to 5, and then they were
Right,
popped down
down
a little
about
bit
4
lower
now.
to 4. So, they're hanging around. I mean, again, the main one concern is if rates do go up significantly, if there's some inflation in the forecast, then
it changes the whole.
that changes the whole equation. It could be interesting.
Any other-
Not in a
No,
good way.
that's it for me.
That's it.
Thank
All
you.
right, great.
Great.
Always a
Thanks,
pleasure,
Liz.
guys.
See you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Happy New Year. A little
Happy New
lately.
Year, yes.
All right.
Yes,
Thanks,
may
Mike.
you be
Okay.
healthy and prosperous.
Yes, for all. Thank you.
Right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, do you have any we probably.
We can take a recess?
Yeah, we'll have
Yeah.
recess
Take a
until 1
recess
o'clock.
for.